the Baen Free Radio Hour.
On the podcast, one big score and a shot at retribution, fit the pieces to solve an assassination plot, and history in the remaking. Plus, we continue our ongoing audiobook serialization of Timothy Zahn's Cobra, all right now. Welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. It's a pleasure to have you along. I am Baen Associate Editor and your podcast host, David F. Sharirod. Today, we bring you DJ Butler's interview with Michael Z. Williamson about Target Terror, a collection of 3 military adventure novels out now in trade paperback and ebook formats. But first, the news. This July, we've got a science fiction heist, a noir-tinged mystery set in the heart of a galactic empire, and an alternate history novel from a master, all in hardcover or trade paperback, and all available now. First up is The Icarus Plot by Timothy Zahn.
There wasn't much money to be made as a trailblazer, searching out new worlds for possible development. Still, it was safer than the bounty hunter career that had cost Gregory Rourke his left arm 6 years ago. And thanks to his Cadolian partner, Celine's ultra-sensitive sense of smell, they occasionally discovered a medically promising seed or spore they could sell under the table. It was a quiet life, uneventful and mostly legal, until Rourke was approached by 2 men with a proposal: track down a mysterious woman named Tara, and through her locate a secret project called Icarus. The challenge was intriguing. The unlimited budget was tempting. But Rourke had a more personal reason to accept the job: the chance for long-delayed payback.
Next, we have The Jigsaw Assassin by Catherine ASARO.
Soleil City is the capital of the Emiralate and one of the most desired locales of the Scolian Empire. But its thin veneer of civilization is cracked when a series of brutal crimes implicates those in political power in a vast conspiracy. 3 prominent scientists have lost their lives to a serial killer, and notes at the scenes of the crimes lead to a connection to the Royalist political party. Major Baen, former military officer turned private detective, is called back to Soleil City to solve the crime. Baj and her crew of undercity dust knights plunge into the Byzantine world of imperial politics, a jigsaw world where none of the pieces seem to fit. As the assassination plot becomes more and more convoluted, Baj is kidnapped, threatened with death, and must fight for her life against the growing number of people threatened by her investigation. Baj has faced all this and more, but now she must deal with something far deadlier: interstellar politics.
And finally, it's 1812, The Rivers of War by Eric Flint.
In this alternate history of the American frontier in the Jacksonian era, a small change takes place in the Battle of the Horseshoe Bend during the War of 1812. Unlike in our world, Ensign Sam Houston is not seriously wounded, which allows him to continue fighting the British and develop his close relationship with Andrew Jackson much sooner. Houston organizes a defense of the U.S. Capitol that prevents the British from destroying it and makes him a national hero. He then plays a central role in the defense of New Orleans under Jackson's command, changing the course of that battle in ways that will, over time, transform the relationship between the United States, the Indian tribes of the South, and the slaves brought over from Africa.
That's The Icarus Plot by Timothy Zahn, Jigsaw Assassin by Catherine ASARO, and 1812, The Rivers of War by Eric Flint. And that's it for the news. Now, DJ Butler talks to Michael Z. Williamson about Target Terror.
Hi, this is DJ Butler. I'm here with Mike Williamson to talk about his new novel. Well, it's not a new novel. It's a reprint omnibus, right? Target Terror.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. It is out now in trade paperback and all your favorite ebook formats. DRM free when you buy at Baen.com, as always. Oh, I'm just gonna pull this up here now. I got all jumbled up in our efforts to connect. Sorry. There we go. Michael Z. Williamson is retired military, having served 25 years in the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force. He was deployed for Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Desert Fox. Williamson is a state-ranked competitive shooter in combat rifle and combat pistol. All this is very interesting background, by the way, for Target Terror. He has consulted on military matters, weapons, and disaster preparedness for Discovery Channel and Outdoor Channel Productions, and is editor-at-large for Survival Blog with 300,000 weekly readers. In addition to these activities, Williamson tests and reviews firearms and gear for manufacturers. Williamson's books set in his Freehold universe include Freehold, Better to Beg Forgiveness, and Do Unto Others. His novel, The Hero, written in collaboration with New York Times bestselling author John Ringo, has reached modern classic status. Williamson was born in England, raised in Liverpool and Toronto, Canada, and now resides near Indianapolis with his wife and children. Mike, hey, welcome to the radio hour. Okay, so we mentioned a little bit, this is an omnibus reprint. So I don't know the publication history. Tell me, when did these books first come out, and were they Baen books?
So the setting is 2004, 2005. That's when they were written, and that's where they're set. And technology has advanced tremendously in the war zone since then. So that is the time and place. I'd sold Freehold. I think I was talking to John and Jim Baen about the weapon, and Bill Fawcett had an idea for a contemporary trilogy. He had a publisher, he had background, and he basically works as a sub-editor. And was at a convention on a panel, and someone said he was trying to look me up. And he asked what I knew about sniping. Now, sniping is a variety of skills, not just shooting. As far as shooting, I've beat them in competition. But there's a lot more to it than just shooting. It's intelligence gathering, it's placement, it's analysis of the environment, a whole bunch of skills. But I know enough about shooting. I teamed up with photographer Oleg Volk, who's done a couple of my book jacket photos and a couple of others for Baen, and we went down to Fort Benning and actually talked to the commander of the sniper school and watched some of them in training in the field. Got some photos and used that as additional background. So it's a trilogy. The first one is set, it's on the Pakistan side of the Afghan border. And of course, the U.S. has never officially crossed national borders to engage in that.
So I'm sure we never actually did either.
Just like we never went into Cambodia during Vietnam.
Yeah.
And it's tribal warfare. And I don't know if stuff like this had made the news at the time, but it certainly did later, that a lot of those tribes were using the U.S. to settle their differences. Oh, yeah, they're the bad guys right there.
He's Al Qaeda.
Yeah. There's a bunch of guys still stuck at Guantanamo from circumstances like that. And depending on the circumstances, they can't go back because their home countries will execute them. So,
yeah.
But that's the first one. The second one is
hold on. This is good, but let me
Sure.
ask some questions here. So I like your point. We actually, in the opening scenes, right, kind of makes this point that sniping is not just shooting,
right?
Because we're in a training scenario, and there's spotting and there's stealth elements going on, right? And it's also not just a solo activity, right? This is sort of a key part of the back.
Usually a spotter sniper team. Yeah. When I was active duty, I worked as an aggressor some of the time, and we'd infiltrate the field and the unit in training in the field. So I've done some slow, lengthy stalks and got inside the perimeter.
So that's the guy who's on his belly and Achilles.
So we're at the sniper school watching these kids. It's like, so you're evenly spaced and you're all taking the same line. Once they see one of you, they're going to see all of you. You got to be dispersed. And on the one hand, you've got a time frame and on where you've got to get in, but at the same time, you don't want to rush because the more movement there is, the more likely you are to attract attention.
Yeah.
And so all of that is relevant to both training and to the actual events. Yeah.
Yeah, and the backstory, right? The backstory is Kyle Monroe, who's who's the shooter, right? Has lost his former
Lost a spotter in a previous mission. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so let's talk about him a little bit and explore book one maybe a little bit more.
Sure.
So tell us about Kyle Monroe. What should we know about this guy?
Boy, it's been a long time. I wrote these almost 20 years ago. Yeah, he's highly trained, and of course, a lot of the training I don't have, so I had to allude to some of it. There's stuff I can go into detail about, and there's stuff where, like, well, I actually haven't done that. No, that's why it's fiction. But yeah, he lost his spotter in a previous mission. He's rather ate up. And they're both trying to get him back into the field, and they need his technical expertise.
Yeah.
And they believe they're eliminating enemies of us, and it turns out initially that it's enemies of various tribes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's an instructor at the school. And
I like he's got this kind of this he's had this loss, right? But that doesn't make him at all reluctant when they come to him and say, the general calls him in, and they bond over their shared feeling about formal uniforms, and and he they say, hey, we want you to go in there, and this Al Qaeda number 3, I think, is basically the
the concern is more for the students while he's acting as an instructor, and for his spotter while they're in the field. He's confident about himself.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency, maybe I'm thinking about Hollywood here, but there's a tendency to sort of portray our soldiers sometimes as damaged goods, and if you had an experience where you're
as clueless. Oh, they have no idea why they're doing this.
Yes, they're clueless.
A bunch of us had plenty of knowledge, training, study, research on what we were doing.
Yeah, and he's neither one of those, right? He's had a hard experience, but he gets right in the saddle when it's time to saddle up.
Yeah, that's Hollywood, and it's a lot of mainstream fiction. I've always hated it because from a young, I knew why I was in the military. Part of it was because I needed to mature. I was not ready for college. Part of it was to get away from home, and part of it was patriotic duty. I mean, there was everybody's got a reason or multiple reasons why they're serving. It's not just, well, I have nothing better to do.
Right.
There's almost no one like that, and they don't stick around long.
Right. The soldier who's a chump or a victim,
they find a reason or they get out.
Yeah. Well, I like the scene where right up front again, he says, they say, hey, we're gonna, we got to learn some languages, and he says, oh, right, it'll be Arabic, right? I can brush my Arabic. I'm like, well, no, probably not.
No,
it's gonna be Pashto, but actually it's gonna be the Pakistani dialect is Pukto, I think, or right.
Pakto. Yeah. I know some they're not native speakers, but they're in Pakistan and they do speak it.
So there is an element of lack of information here, right? It's not corrupt higher ups or manipulating this guy. It's that we have bad information about maybe who the target is and why we're
sure. And especially in the beginning phases of any war, there's a lot of that. It's like, well, who do we send? What do we do? The military is usually very trained for the previous war.
Yeah.
Whatever the previous war was, they've built a doctrine, they've built plans.
Yeah.
And there was also a tendency at that time, we were very ready for a Cold War to go hot, because that's an easy war to plan for. You know what the enemy's capabilities are. It looks good when you're being examined, reviewed, etc. And then here comes a bunch of reasonably high-tech thugs hiding out among a bunch of primitive tribesmen. Yeah, so this is a total, how do you get to them? What do you do? This is not a war anyone had actually planned for. And they had to put plans together in a hurry.
Yeah. So so I want to get to the other books in a second here, but like what are, I mean the book's been out for 20 years, right? So what are some of the kind of situations now that his spotter gets assigned a spotter. So this is sort of not a buddy comedy, but it's it's two guys consistently over the stories.
And his spotter's black, which means he stands out in large chunks of the world other than America. Yeah,
including among Afghan and Pakistani tribesmen.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's interesting. So as like a what kind of hijinks ensue? What are some of the other hijinks that ensue over the border in Pakistan there?
Well, the group they were with had one goal in mind, and then they eventually meet up with a different tribe. Of course, everything over there is tribal. There was a Doonesbury, including Iraq all the way over through the stands to parts of China. There was a Doonesbury joke about it years ago about how I know this person, he is Sunni scum. Well, the CIA wants him alive. Well, that may not be possible. I'm sworn to vengeance. For what? A member of his family killed a member of my family. When? 1392. What is the matter with you people? But there is a large element of that. And when I was over there in Iraq, Kuwait area, we were doing maintenance and support. And in Kuwait, we had excellent contractors. In Iraq, they were always a friend or associate or relative of the mayor, and you just had to double check their work. He's a very good electrician. He doesn't know which wires to hook up. Well, the mayor says he's a very good electrician. There's lots and lots of that. Favorites, backstabbing, like long as somebody gets paid off. So all of that enters into it. They meet up with one group. They're supposed to meet with another group. They're on the wrong side of the border for the war officially. They're trying to bag someone. They wind up, they're really out. It really should have been a lot more than two people. And part of my concern was that a mission like this should be a much bigger operation. But at the same time, I could see them trying to do something very low key and stealthy, and getting some details wrong and having issues. I mean, there's lots of times where any kind of operation, this totally wasn't planned. Nobody actually knew what they were doing here, but they had to do something. So
yeah, there was an opportunity. We know what a guy is we want to kill.
Yeah.
And one of the comments up front is, hey, isn't this this is addressed, right? Hey, isn't this something that Delta or I forget who the other
or the SEALs or the groups,
that shouldn't they be doing? And the comments, well, something like, well, they're getting too much attention right now. We have this opportunity. We need to do this a little quietly. So it's going to be you. Now is that choice because you could have written a story about a SEAL team, right?
Yeah. Bill handed me a rough scenario, location, characters, and I wrote it from there.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was conceived as being kind of two guys. That's
right.
Part of it. Yeah. All right. Interesting. So okay, so now that's very much global war on terror. Afghanistan, Pakistan. Book 2, then we go in some slightly different places.
It's in Romania mostly.
Yeah. Not vampires though. This is all.
No.
We're saying there's no actual vampires. However many references to Vlad the Impaler we get.
Well, they wind up under one of his castles. I actually found photos of that castle, and there was an elevator from the castle to the passages underneath that show up in the book. And when I looked at the photos, the wiring was relatively recent, so it had been in use,
Yeah.
for something. Okay, why is there THHN wire on an elevator that theoretically hasn't been used in decades?
Aha. That's interesting. So is the castle well, okay, so we'll ask this question, then get back to the story. But so is the castle's a real castle, but is it
Yes.
abandoned in real
No,
life?
it's accessible to tourists. Certain parts of it are, and just like any site, parts are locked off either for safety, security, whatever.
Yeah.
And,
But
and
someone's using the elevator apparently.
yeah, well, they're tracking terrorists who are bringing explosives up into Europe through the Black Sea. And so there's some recon at one of the ports. They're in a couple of different cities.
Yeah.
They're,
So these guys, Kyle and Wade stay together, right?
yes.
So
Usually.
is that normal? Like, does one? I have no idea. Like in the U.S. military, do you keep a spotter team together? Is it that they learn to work with each other?
Yeah, typically. So I mean, two sets of eyes. They can switch off with brief breaks. And if you have a narrow field of view through a scope. So once you're on a scope, having somebody else to, one, keep an eye out around you for potential threats, and two, see what may be coming into view, going out of view, etc.
Yeah.
And they've got to be able to gauge the distance. They're also qualified as a shooter. It's just one will do the shooting and one will do the spotting.
So they could trade off if
They can. Depends in part on how specific the weapon is to the shooter. If everything is mechanically correct, you can usually just swap off. But then everybody's got a slightly different stance. The scope, the stock, everything may be adjusted for one shooter rather than the other.
Mm-hmm. So, and is it common for a shooter and a spotter to sort of be assigned for extended periods together? Is that?
I mean, typically they stick together during whatever operation or deployment, as far as I know.
Okay.
And again, this isn't something I've personally done. This was all based on research. But,
sure.
And yeah, if you got two people who work well together, you stay together because you get better results that way.
Yeah, so it should. It should work that way.
The other end of this is what's called a designated marksman, who's a single shooter who's assigned to a unit, and their job is just to engage threats at a greater distance than is typically common with carbines and other small arms.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So so that's a different setup though, right? That's
right.
That's never this story. So these guys, so it's still global war on terror, but it's hey, look, the threat is coming closer to home being Europe anyway.
And this is not any part of the war zone.
Yes. Oh, right. Very good.
Yeah.
So you have things like domestic civic police.
Yes.
Or European civilian populations to worry about.
Yep. Yeah, they're trying for urban shot with a suppressed carbine.
Yeah. So okay, so book one, we're going after a senior. We think we're going after a senior Al Qaeda guy who, I mean, the opening scene, we see he's a pretty bad guy. So book two is what's the threat then?
Terrorist smuggling explosives in for Europe. Remember, this was before. I think this was before the train bombing in Spain, and of course back during the Cold War, various of the communist groups would blow up discos, bars, etc. in Germany. So I was running that as a scenario that AQ and Associates were going to start trying to expand their footprint.
Yep. Excellent. So what kind of Kyle and Wade, what kind of challenges they run into then in this very different environment?
Well, the Romanians officially don't know they're there.
Are they part of the coalition, Romania? I don't remember.
I don't remember if they were or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they're a convenient way to get to other countries.
Yeah.
As currently, they're very concerned about because between them and Ukraine is Moldova,
which is not large.
Yeah, they've been offering some support because they're a little concerned about having Russia that close to them again.
Yeah.
In all of this, it's Russia again for a lot of these countries.
Yeah.
But from there, you're into it's really not that far from Poland, Czech Republic, Germany.
Yep.
And you can bring stuff in on ships into smaller ports, and either or even large ones. There's a variety of ways of smuggling stuff through. Either disguise it as something else, have so much stuff that they don't want to inspect everything and just check a couple. Bribe somebody,
land something at night in a small boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the Black Sea, right? The Black Sea.
Yes.
Black Sea there. So they're bringing in stuff from Turkey or somewhere.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Iran, and although Iran would not necessarily be friendly to those operations, but I mean, there's all kinds of ways in and through.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else you want to share about book 2?
Well, they do wind up under the castle, and I tried to make it creepier than vampires. There's some almost hilarity where they're reconnoitering the castle, and then they're trying to leave the area, and it's daylight, and there's tourists coming about, and there's these guys in camouflage, and
yeah,
this is the real test of your camo. Can you avoid being seen by the tourists?
That's awesome. So okay, so it's a trilogy. So book 3, where does book 3 take us? What's the setup here?
Originally it was Yemen. I don't know anything about Yemen, and there isn't a whole lot to hide behind big chunks of Yemen. So I moved it to Indonesia because I've got friends there.
Okay.
Friends from there. And there's all kinds of, or at least at the time, there's all kinds of back and forth between various groups. The historical summary on Indonesia is that when the Dutch East Indies, as it was, and when the Dutch left, they told Jakarta, all right, you can have Aceh. They'd never gone through the formality of conquering Aceh. It's like me saying, yeah, you can have my house, you can have my neighbor's house too. So there's been up through, I think it may have, I heard it's actually backed off a lot since that major earthquake and tsunami. But there was ongoing internecine warfare between the Acehnese and the Javanese. And of course, everybody wants the oil, the gas, and everything else. So the only people they could find to support them were terrorists. Yeah. And some of them were really not very nice people, but some of them just wanted to be left alone and not have their land looted for resources. Just like groups a lot of places.
Sure, it's complicated, right? You get a mixture of like nationalism or just self-defense, but also
culturalism. Aceh has the majority of Indonesia's gas and oil. Yeah. And Jakarta was happy to take it, and we basically ignore them otherwise and not give them any of the benefit of this. Which tends to offend people. But they're going after one of the confirmed terror groups. They have local allies who they're supposed to be supporting. The end of it, they have additional U.S. forces to help, and
So is
And
this
then
kind of an assassinate the leader setup again? What's the goal of the mission?
I don't remember. There's a couple of different aspects. They're trying to rescue someone's wife and daughter who were hostage. They're trying to stop a particular group. And this is one of the sources of explosives. Anywhere there's large gas or oil operations, you'll find explosives. And the trick about explosives is that once you use them, they're gone. So how do you account for them? So lots of stuff has been stolen from construction and mining sites for a long time. You say you used 10 pounds, you used 7. Well, there's 3 pounds available to go somewhere else.
Sure.
How do you account for what doesn't exist anymore? Yeah.
Right.
But at the end, they have an amphibious ship. They've got some SEALs in a small boat. There's a halo jump going in. So their allies are fairly competent, fairly sophisticated, and relatively decent people.
So that's more like the designated marksman scenario where there's a SEAL team there supporting.
Well, the SEALs are supporting them. The SEAls would get them out after the fact.
Oh, okay.
If you parachute in, how do you get out?
Yeah.
There's not really an easy way to reverse that.
So as you're setting these stories up and you're writing stories, like are you this is dangerously close to like a craft question, and like I'm not supposed to interview you about craft, but we'll get close. So are you thinking, okay, I'm gonna write this where, I mean, these guys are obviously soldiers, right? They can do more than just snipe.
Right.
But are you trying to design the I mean, I guess every mission they go in thinking that the climax of the mission is going to be, and then we're going to shoot somebody from far away.
Typically, yes.
Yeah. Do you as the writer, are you trying to set up the climaxes that way, or do you kind of subvert that expectation, send them in there?
So there has to be some shooting because they're snipers. The reader's expecting some shooting, so there's got to be some shooting,
right?
And shooting
for romance plot.
And shooting's fun. I was doing some pest control the other night. We had something attacking the chickens again, and I went out and it's kind of fun going out with a suppressed rifle with night vision.
Oh well, yeah.
But there has to be some shooting because that's it's the Chekhov's gun thing.
Yep.
Literally, when we're showing a gun, we're showing some snipers, so there has to be some precision shooting. Yep. But there has to be more to it than just that, because that gets boring very quickly. And we took the shot at the end. That's
right.
Yeah. And
there has to be there's an Indiana Jones thing, right? Like it's more fun as things go wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was researching the first one, one of the issues at the time was the limited battery life for the radios. They can't have the radio on for extended periods of time, and those are encrypted, and there's various ways of encrypting, but one of them is once you're in the network, it stays encrypted. There's a signal to track everything. To get into the network, you have to identify yourself to someone, be positively identified, and then get hooked in. So we had a satellite cell phone. Of course, these days, a lot of that is a lot easier to do. 20 years makes a huge difference. And we were developing technology as we went because we needed to.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So how do you, okay. So obviously you have to plan around the limitation of your battery life. Does that mean taking spare batteries? Does that mean, hey, we have fixed contact points or?
Right. Yeah. Certain time frames for contact.
Right.
Limited number of batteries. And that's all weight you have to carry. And then of course, if you'll miss a contact, then there's other issues.
Yeah.
The novelization of incident Bravo 20 by Andy McNabb. He was British SAS. They apparently had 2 radios. One was a transmitter, one was a receiver.
Oh, interesting.
They were transmitting, not getting a response. they thought their transmitter had broken, the receiver had broken. Headquarters heard what they said, but
and
couldn't respond to them that there's someone on the way. So, and yeah, that turned into a massive ball of snakes.
Fantastic. Well, okay. So what about these guys? The relationship. So Wade and Kyle. How does that relationship go? Does it evolve over time?
Well, yeah, when they meet, I mean, they know who each other is because it's a small community. So they know who each other is. They've met now and then. They get a very good bond as professionals and co-workers, and by the end, they're friends. I mean, they've been through a lot together, and and a lot of the time is sitting around waiting for things to happen, which has to be, they've got to fill that time, and I as a writer have to fill that time. So,
well, and there's like we're in craft here again, right? But most of the time you don't want the novel to just constantly get more and more tense. You need to give them like a little break where they sit back and drink out of the Camelback for a minute and figure
make some tea with the Australians in Indonesia.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's an empire thing. The Brits, the Aussies, the Kiwis are going to have tea. It's just
true. Cool. Well, great fun. What else? I mean, you wrote these 20 years ago. I guess congratulations, first of all, they're coming out again in a reprint. But what else? What else would you like to say about the books? What haven't we talked about that would be interesting for readers?
So I tried to I did what research I could on the cultures in the area. For Indonesia, I've got friends from that area, and so even getting translations and recipes and that wasn't hard. For Romania, quite a bit of reading. Talked to some people from that area. I actually didn't know Mona Lisa Foster at the time because she would have been great, but and went with what I could. Pakistan, I had very little to go with at the time. I actually have quite a number of friends in Pakistan now who mostly speak better English than American college students, which is not that big a surprise. And but I do remember asking one of the ones I knew at the time about the tribal region. He said, "Oh, we don't go there. That's not a good place."
Yeah.
So that border region is kind of no man's land for both countries.
Yeah.
And of course, ultimately, that's where they found Osama hanging out, was in Pakistan. I may have actually seen some of the training for that. I'm not sure, but I watched I was filming with Discovery Channel in the US, and we were at a remote military installation, and there's these Navy helicopters coming in and doing touch and goes inside one of the training compounds, and they told us just to not mention it, not ignore, not take photos. And a few months later, that's exactly what they did to get him. I'm wondering if that was the I hope so. It would have been cool to see that. So they could have just been routine training, but
I mean, it's very interesting to think about the fact that when you wrote these novels, Osama bin Laden was at large. It's back in. I'd have to go back and look at exactly. I mean, the London bus bombing was kind of about this time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2005, 2006, maybe. So
right.
maybe it was like shortly afterwards. The Bali bombing would have been like 2003. Like 4.
Yeah, all these places wound up involved.
Yeah, and you were writing it as this stuff was happening,
or before in a lot of cases.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's become a kind of historical fiction, and I know you're a very sophisticated guy around the gear and stuff, and so it's sort of become historical fiction, but like it wasn't. It was very
right. It was contemporary at the time.
Yeah. with the limitations of contemporary equipment and contemporary strategy.
Because I grew up in the UK, and we had occasional threats from the IRA. When we left, we had to temporarily debark the aircraft because they had unidentified luggage aboard, which turned out just to be luggage. But that was just something that was in the background. And the London bombing, and I see this press release from Al Qaeda that Britain is quaking from north to south, and I'm going, probably not. And they interviewed this pensioner in London, and he says, "I was bombed by a better class of bastards 60 years ago."
That's pretty funny.
It's like, yeah, you thought a bomb was gonna shake up the UK? That's Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, I worked in London for 5 years, and I first went there as a summer intern in summer of '98, and I made a comment to people in the office. It seems very hard to find a trash can on the street.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that's a good place to hide a bomb. So we don't. Now I think as I was there, that was already kind of changing a bit, but I think
it actually has. When I was flying through there in '99 for Desert Fox, it was just 6 of us from my unit, and we flew in civilian clothes until we hit Kuwait. And so we're in the airport, and there's Middle Eastern family ahead of me with a pile of luggage, huge pile of luggage. And the mother went to sit down, and I think the father took one of the kids to the bathroom, and there's 2 or 3 other kids, and all of a sudden the kids left the luggage, and I'm standing right behind it, and I just fairly clearly said, "Whose luggage is this?" And all of a sudden they came back over and they were perfectly harmless, but they understood if they left their luggage abandoned, they were going to be very quickly questions.
Yeah.
The luggage was going to be dealt with.
Right.
Yeah.
Might lose the luggage at a minimum.
Yeah. And have a lot of questions. You never leave a bag unattended. You never put it down. And part of that is just because people will steal it. As civilized as Europe claims to be, if you put anything down unattended, it's gone.
Yeah. Yep.
And of course, all of this comes into writing in various parts of the world.
Yeah, your own experience.
Yeah. Well, we're talking craft here, but yeah, little personal experiences play into everything.
Yeah.
The first novel I talk about airport security, and that was some of my actual experience with airport security at that time. I actually have been on in the tube walking to the aircraft, stopped by Customs and Border Patrol and asked for my passport, and I handed him my military ID and my orders. And the guy just kind of smirks and says, "Are you carrying more than $10,000 cash today?" I said, "Well, sir, if I was, it wouldn't be any of your business, would it? Have a nice day."
That's funny.
There have been people in my unit carrying more than $10,000 in cash, depending on what we were doing. So,
yeah, of course.
In several currencies.
Yeah. Wow, fun. That's better than my airport security stories. Mine are mostly just infuriatingly dumb. I got stopped in the London airport, held me up. Heathrow.
Yeah. Notoriously. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is like right after. I mean, this must have been not right after. This would have been like spring 2002 or something.
Yeah.
So, and it was my home leave, and they had a series of questions, and person said, "Did someone other than you buy your ticket for you?" And I said, "Well, yes, this is my home leave. The ticket was purchased by my employer, the largest law firm in the world."
Huh.
And I had to have more questioning. And I said, "Why are you questioning?" Well, this is the kind of things terrorists do, isn't it? I said, "Really? Terrorists are white guys going home to Utah, and
right,
the largest law firm in the world, headquartered in London. That's who buys the tickets for them."
Coming back from Germany once, all passengers for Chicago need to have their passports out. And I start reaching for my passport. You're fine, sir. You're fine, sir. The black officer with us was fine. Middle Easterners and North Africans who weren't Israeli, that was the ones they wanted to talk to. Germany makes no bones about it. You fit a certain profile. So where are you going near Chicago? Round Lake. And who's in Round Lake? Your grandma. Okay. They will ask, just some routine questions,
Right.
but to see if you can, answer without stuttering and without a blank stare.
Right. Yeah. Well, interesting how some countries have gotten more.
That Heathrow's security was abysmal. It was horrible. So.
Well, fantastic, Mike. I'm very excited. Anything else you want to tell readers about the book?
Well, it was good to get these back in print. They'd been languishing for a while, and Tony said they'd stick them out electronically and see how they did. And all of a sudden, respectable size royalty checks showed up for just downloads, and it's like, oh, well, okay, that's pretty cool. I did fix some technical. I left them in the exact setting they are, but I fixed a couple of technical errors. I actually screwed up one of my guns. So it does happen, and a couple other minor things. So I fixed those from a technical perspective without changing any of the action flow, anything.
Yeah.
Just to not have the that was stupid sitting right there.
Yeah, I inevitably have at least a couple of typos when I come to the mass market edition, and
yeah, and I'll do that. I don't want to be George Lucas and constantly rewrite the story, even if it's like, I'd write a different story now, but this is what I wrote. That's the story. That's what it is. It's
right.
If I see an obvious glaring typo, an obvious glaring misuse of a word,
you stuck in the wrong character name. Someone this morning pointed out to me, this guy in this novel of yours I'm reading, this guy's already dead. He can't be saying this. And I looked at it.
So when John and I wrote The Hero, I'm reading through the bound galley. And then the character drops his rucksack, takes off across the river, and then goes to inventory his rucksack. Like, oh dear. Oh dear.
Good to catch you at the galleys, though. That's
right.
That's an example of you caught it.
Yes. Well, he still. So I since they have the approach ruck, and then you have a small patrol pack. I just moved some stuff into the patrol pack. And made it work that way. But yeah, these things happen constantly in anything you're writing. For a long time until now, the paperback is much better edited than the hardcover. It was there's a lot of characters. It's a complicated book, and of course in theory, when you introduce an acronym, you're supposed to have it spelled out. The military doesn't do that. We all know the acronyms. No one spells them out. So there's a glossary in the mass market.
The mass market, yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of people will not, I mean, these days Google makes it a lot easier to figure out what some of these terms are. But
that's true. Although, man, a lot of acronyms have, 5 or 10 different.
At least.
Yeah. So you're looking at a list going, which one is this?
Yeah.
Oh,
military acronym. There we go.
Yeah. The one that is a gun.
We alternate between acronyms and profanity.
Very efficient language.
Sorry?
It's a very efficient language.
Yes. Well, the profanity is punctuation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, between acronyms.
Awesome. Well, hey, once again, the book is Target Terror, out now from Baen, out now again in trade paperback and in ebook. Mike Williamson, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you.
And now we bring you Timothy Zahn's Cobra. Earth's only hope was the Cobras. The colony worlds Adirondack and Silvern fell to the Troft forces almost without a struggle. Outnumbered and on the defensive, Earth made a desperate decision. It would attack the aliens not from space, but on the ground, with forces the Trofts did not even suspect. Thus were created the Cobras, a guerrilla force whose weapons were surgically implanted, invisible to the unsuspecting eye, yet undeniably deadly. But power brings temptation, and not all the Cobras could be trusted to fight for Earth alone. Johnny Moreau would learn the uses and abuses of his special abilities and what it truly meant to be a Cobra.
It was a somber group that gathered in Johnny's room that evening after dinner. "I wonder what it's going to be like," Nofke said, sitting at the table shuffling his cards restlessly. "Not easy, that's for sure," Singh sighed. "We've already had minor injuries when everyone knew what he and his opponents were doing. We could very well lose someone out there." "Or several someones," Halloran agreed. He was standing at the window, staring out. Past his shoulder, Johnny could see a sprinkling of lights from other parts of Frere Complex, and further away, the lights from Farnsea, the nearest civilian town. Somehow it reminded him of his home and family, a thought that added to his gloom. "They wouldn't make it dangerous enough to actually kill us, would they?" Nofke asked, though his tight expression indicated he already knew the answer. "Why not?" Halloran retorted. "Sure, they've spent a lot on us, but there's no sense letting marginal ones go on to get killed the minute they land on Adirondack. Why do you think they put off implanting our computers until after the test?" "To save some money where possible," Johnny grunted. "Parr, stop shuffling those cards. Either deal them or put them away." "You know what we need?" Viljo spoke up abruptly. "A night out of this place. A few drinks, some music, a little conversation with real people, especially of the female sort." "And how exactly do you expect to persuade Mendro to let us out for this little sortie?" Deutsch snorted. "Actually, I wasn't planning to ask him," Viljo said calmly. "I think that qualifies as going AWOL," Halloran pointed out. "There are lots of easier ways to get ourselves crushed." "Nonsense. Bai said we were off duty, didn't he? Anyway, has anyone ever explicitly told us we were confined to Frere Complex?" There was a short silence. "Well, no, now that you mention it," Halloran admitted. But nothing. We can sneak out of here easily enough. This place isn't even guarded as well as a regular military base would be. Come on. None of us is going to sleep well tonight anyway. We might as well have some fun. Because tomorrow we might die. No one said those words aloud, but from the shifting of feet it was clear everyone was thinking variations of them. And after another brief silence, Halloran got to his feet. "Sure, why not?" "I'm in," Nofke nodded quickly. "I hear there's good card games to be had in the pleasure centers in town." "Along with lots of other stuff," Deutsch nodded. "Druma? Johnny? How about it?" Johnny hesitated, his brother's words about decadence and holding on to his ethics flashing through his mind. Still, Viljo was right. Nowhere in their verbal or written orders had there been anything about not leaving the complex. "Come on, Johnny," Viljo said, using his first name for the first time in days. "If you can't justify it as relaxation, think of it as practice infiltrating an enemy-occupied city." "All right," Johnny said. After all, he wouldn't have to do anything in town he didn't feel right about. "Just let me change into my other fatigues." "Fridge on that," Viljo interrupted. "Those look fine. Quit stalling and let's go. Druma?" "Oh, I guess so," Singh agreed. "But only for a little while." "You'll be able to leave whenever you want to," Halloran assured him. "Once we're in town, everyone's on his own timetable." "Well, out the window?" "Out and up," Viljo nodded. "Lights out. Here goes."
That was another installment in Timothy Zahn's Cobra, and that's it for the podcast. Thanks as always to Audible.com and podcast theme composer Ruth Judkowitz. Praise, thanks, and gratitude to Michael Z. Williamson for talking with us today, and good night, Tony Daniel, wherever you are. This is David F. Shirirod coming to you from a soundproof bunker somewhere deep in the heart of Texas. Join us here next week at the hammering heart of science fiction and fantasy, and keep reaching for the stars.